Sometimes when I'm walking through the craft store, I get inspired by the weirdest things. In this case, this tiny little squirrel I found. I thought it would be fun to use this squirrel but make it extra big in the model, like the size of a horse. So I'm using 1/35th scale humans, in this case these milkmen. I'm going to use this model here because I like that he's able to carry something. I'm going to put an acorn in there later, and I also like his little mustache. I'm also using this Western European cart. I was going to build the cart from scratch, but the wheels were really hard, so I'm going to steal the wheels and build the cart by hand. I take my time and cut out all the wheels, the suspension, and any of the axles that I need, and I'll leave the rest for a later build. I leave the two main parts separate in order to make it easier to paint later on. This cart model is originally supposed to have 2 horses on either side, or 2 squirrels in my case, but I only have 1 squirrel, so I'm going to have to make a few modifications, which are pretty simple. For the main body of the cart, I'm using these coffee stir sticks, and I'll cut them up and use 4 wide with a little band in the middle to keep everything together, and then 3 tall on each side. I built a little bench using more of those coffee stir sticks and a little place to put your feet. Here is my little farmer / milkman, and I put the body together, but I'm keeping the head separate for now just to make it a bit easier for me to paint. Once all the parts are assembled, I can put them all on a few pins, and that will make it easier for me to paint later. I give everything a coat of flat black primer and a dusting of white spray paint. While that base coat is drying, I can start working on the base, which in this case is 2 pieces of craft wood glued together, and then I will glue a top coat of foam core. I take off the paper from the foam core and then glue it down using some Mod Podge. And once that dries, I can clean up all the edges and give it a nice round over. For the main body of the cart, I'm using these alcohol inks to stain the wood. This is just a first layer of color, and I'll be adding more weathering pigments and paint on top of it, like you can see here. This is a form of weathering called weathering pigments or powder pigments, and I just use a brush and rub it into the wood using a bit of isopropyl alcohol to make sure it sinks in and stains the wood. I then go in with a lighter tan color and do a dry brushing over the entire thing. This brings out some of those wood details and makes it look like an old cart. For the wooden parts on the cart, all the spokes and the wheel itself, I use a tan color at first, and then I will go in with a brown wash and cover everything to make it look like wood. And all the metal parts get a coat of a silver metallic paint, and then I will go over with that same brown wash as the wood and weather it up. And now that everything is dry, I can start to install it on the cart. I can now move on to painting my farmer. This is the second human miniature I've ever painted in my entire life, so I am still learning the ropes. If you're looking for an actual tutorial on painting miniatures, just go on YouTube and type in miniature model human painting or something along those lines, and you'll find a bunch of very talented artists who can teach you a lot better than I can. I'm just slowly adding colors until I am happy with the final result, and at the end of the day, I tried my best and that's what counts. I decided I would go with a red top and blue overalls, and there's the head, and I put the final hat on, and oh my god, I made Mario. It's Mario. Well, Mario is a bit too clean to be a farmer, so I'm adding a coat of gray contrast paint, dabbing up some of the extra to give him that well-worked look. Moving on to the squirrel. This is the first squirrel I've ever painted, and I could have just kept it the factory paint job, but that kind of felt like cheating and I wanted to give myself a challenge. I'm just slowly adding colors and layers until I'm happy with the final result. I kind of started with a more brown squirrel and then ended up with a gray squirrel, which is totally fine. For the squirrel's harness, I'm going to be using this old fake leather belt, and you can see with these old leather belts, the skin of them tends to come off really easily, and so I'm going to cut it up, peel off that layer, and I get a free little piece of thin leather. I can then cut it down into strips and glue it on to the squirrel in the shape of the harness. The seam lines from the original squirrel are still showing up, so I'm going to use some really small strips of that fake leather and covering it up, integrating it into the harness. I added these small wooden dowels off camera, and they'll attach to the squirrel like this. I mix up some dirt, Mod Podge, and tan paint, and I will cover the entire base in that. I can then go in with some darker washes until I'm happy with the final result. Once I'm happy, I do one final dry brush and call it good. For the big oak tree, I'm using some actual sticks that I found outside, and I'm going to Frankenstein them together into a large oak tree. I trim off some of the excess branches that I don't need, and I can add branches with other pieces and some super glue. I add a pin to the base of the tree to make it easier to attach to the base later, add one final branch for good luck, and we have the base of the tree finished. For the leaves, I'm using Woodland Scenic's clump foliage as well as some bushes. I'm using two different colors because I think the color variation makes it look a bit more natural and it adds to the realism. I'm using tacky glue and gluing on piece by piece until I'm happy with the coverage. To lock everything down and add a bit of color, I'm adding a mix of watered down Mod Podge and some green and brown paint, and this will make everything stick together. I decided I would make the acorns out of wood, so I put a wooden dowel in my drill chuck and used it as a poor man's lathe to cut a few acorn shapes in. Making just these 3 took a while, so I decided I would use some silicone and cast in a bunch more. I made a quick dump mold, and here's me pouring in the silicone. And it's not leaking, I was just bad at aiming my silicone. Once the silicone is fully cured, I can take it out, and then I can cut out the original acorns, and I'm ready for casting. For my casting medium, I'll be using plaster of Paris because it's cheap and dries pretty quick. I'll be using a syringe and a needle to inject the plaster into the molds, so if you don't like needles, look away now. Okay, the needle's gone now. So as you can see, I made quite a few of these off camera. The left is the not so good casts and the right are the really nice casts. I'll be painting all of them using that same alcohol ink that I used before on the cart, and I'll just be using the really nice ones on top or in the trees, and the not so nice casts will go in the bottom of the wagon. I find my very favorite one, and I will glue that one into Mario's hand. I then glue each one down to the cart, starting with the not so nice casts and finishing with the nicer ones. I used tacky glue to attach some of the acorns to the oak tree. Finally, all the parts are done individually, and I can start gluing everything together. I drill holes in the base and start to add all of the parts. Once Mario is glued into place, I can paint the sides black, and with that, it's pretty much done. Hey, it's me again. Thank you so much for sticking around till the end of the video. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like, consider subscribing. I've got plenty more videos on my channel, and if you like this one, you're bound to like a few others. I just launched my channel Patreon. There's absolutely no pressure to subscribe to that, but if you want to support me more directly, that is a great way. You also get access to perks like behind the scenes footage and a shout out in every one of my videos. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please check out the description below or my channel page to find the link to my Patreon. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.